Hi, guys, and welcome back to the TravelTube Podcast, which is the gateway to exploring the world at large. And with me today is another amazing guest who I'd let introduce himself and tell us something fun he likes to do. So, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Anne. My name is Ronald. Everyone calls me Ron. And I would say a fun thing I like to do is ride motorcycles. I've been doing it for the last a little over around 15 years now. So I enjoy that quite a bit. Started pretty young, and I'm still at it. Yeah.
Oh, I got an invited guest over here. My cat came to say hi. Here
Uh,
she is. This one.
okay. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, okay. So, you
Cool.
mentioned that you like riding bikes. How,
Yeah.
how did you come up to, how did you get into that, loving that hobby? Did you start as a child, or was it something you started doing as a fun activity as you grew up? Or I don't know, how did you start doing it?
So with the biking, so first off, currently I'm enjoying a bit of outback riding, which is dirt biking,
Mm-hmm.
which is almost being on a mountain bike and riding in hard trails
Mm-hmm.
uh, only on a motorcycle. So I'm enjoying that now. But when I started off, it was more of a crew. The bike that I first bought was a cruiser,
Mm-hmm.
so it was more just enjoyment, the relaxation you get from it's every rider would tell you this. It's a very freeing feeling when you get on
Mm-hmm.
a bike, and especially with the cruisers,
Mm-hmm.
when you're sitting low and just enjoying the view, plus the ride at the same time. And that's how it started. This was inspired by old friends. I would say this was inspired way earlier on, but more in high school. I did go to a high school where some of the kids were blessed enough to ride to school. So and they used to come in all kinds of bikes, and I like that. It seemed like fun, but at the time couldn't really afford it. But when I could, then I got on it and never stopped. Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
yeah.
And Ron, since you being a biker has enabled you to travel to very many places, have you ever been to any other continent other than Africa?
I definitely have, but not on a bike.
Oh,
Yeah.
so have you traveled
So
to? Or did you have
so
a second home somewhere else?
I sure did. So I could tell you that I have lived in the U.S.
Yes.
I did get to travel to the U.S. and live there for going to 8 years,
Oh.
just a little over 7.
Mm-hmm.
And that became a second home because I left right after high school,
Mm-hmm.
for obvious, as Kenyans, what we do is studies and some work experience to make some money as well. So yeah, and currently just exploring just a little bit of Australia and parts of Dubai. Yeah, so I've been
Oh.
around just a little bit. Yeah, not much.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I had you mentioned a bit of Dubai, and I've seen girls on Instagram being, I have to go to Dubai and do whatever on a yacht. So
Oh yeah,
interesting. So,
yeah. Those are the wealthy people. Yeah.
yes.
Oh,
So,
good.
so how long have you, oh, you said 8 years, right? In the US, right?
Yes.
And what initially brought you there? Was it work, school, family?
So for me, the call there was for school. So that's where I did my undergrad.
Mhm.
So my travel to the US was for education, and more than just the education, you get to learn it's not about the degree, it's about the experience. So that experience as a whole. So yeah, that's what uh, initially got me off the continent. got me off of Kenya to the US. Yeah, for school.
Okay. And
Yeah.
when you went to school, what school did you attend, and what were you even studying? And in regards to studying, how would you compare it to how people study here in Kenya? Like, I hear that in Kenya, our education system is too tough, or it's kind of yani ni ngumu sana. So would you kind of
Yeah.
compare the contrast it from here to how it was in the US when you're studying?
Yeah. So, just to answer the first question, so I initially went to Louisiana at an all blacks university. They gave me a scholar. I had a bit of a scholarship, so that's where I went initially. Uh, but then transferred over to Midwest, out in Kansas City, Missouri, and that's where I finished my studies. Uh, Now, to compare the educational system, I would say it's a lot more laid back out in the US as compared to. I obviously did not do my graduate studies or undergrad studies in Kenya, but just based off of what my friend's experience was to mine and what my research showed me is the big difference is it almost, and forgive me for this, but it almost seemed like undergrad studies in Kenya were more like high school, more felt like it was a high school kind of feel. You were still answerable to the lecturer or the school. In the US, it's a bit different because it's that maturity comes a lot early because you're paying the school fees. This is your problem. The schedule will be there if you want to attend. If you don't want to, that's on you. But you will face the consequences. Obviously, as an international student, it's a bit different. So you do have certain rules that you have to live by when you're in the US when you're out there, and I believe this is the same for other countries where Kenyans go for studies. Uh, but the school in itself will not chase you to show up or to perform. That's solely on you. And one of the big takes off of that is that it puts a sense of responsibility and a sense of you have to be motivated and a self starter because if you don't do that, you'll never get to the end. You'll never make it to the end. And yeah, so I think that is it versus the schooling system in Kenya. And the other one is it's more interactive. I know I remember my middle school and secondary school days where you're sitting in an exam and you have to remember everything or cram everything. But the system here, it's more like you have open book exams, you have projects that you do together. Because in the real world, you need to network and work with people, and you need to be resourceful. You will not have all those resources in here. So you need to be able to, assimilate that into the real life, and that education in the US gives you that. At the time, it obviously is a lot of things. It's been a while, so there's a lot of things that may have changed, but I would say that's the biggest one for me. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned you went there on scholarship, right?
Yeah.
So how were you able to acquire the scholarship? Was there a place you had to apply, or did an institution decide to sponsor it?
So it was a bit of I would say luck on my end because I did look to study abroad. But what had happened in that process is we had family friends that had also traveled, and they had shared this information that hey, if at that point in time, if you're coming from Kenya or from a different country, the school would like to up their international students numbers, and they were giving. It wasn't a huge scholarship. It was around a quarter of it.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, school is obviously a bit more expensive outside, so it does make a difference. Every coin does count, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like a full scholarship. So that's how it came about. So then I just went ahead. School was happy to have international students, so the process was pretty easy, and found myself going to study actually sooner than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Moving on to the next question. Okay, you mentioned that you went there you when you were still in school, right? When you went to the States.
Uh, uh, Say that again. Sorry, I didn't get that question.
I'm saying when you went to the States, you went when you weren't like fully grown, you were still in school, right?
Yeah, I would say. Well, I'll tell you something. Before I went back to my uni, I took 3 years off right off of high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I got into a little bit of business, and just understanding how life works. So I took some time off uh, to kind of you know let it all in. First off, I was free from school, and just absorb that, and then get into the you know a little bit of business. We did have some few things going on with the family, so I got into that a bit. And right after that, I believe I was 22, 21 or 22 when I actually went. So I did have a bit of experience. So I did go to college, to uni, a bit more mature than freshmen or first years that I had met when I went out there. Yeah.
So, when you're interacting with people from over there, I know the life is different from definitely different from here Kenya and where you went in the States. So, did you have any encounter that made you have a culture shock? Then you're like, oh my God, people do this over here. If I do this in my country, people are going to look at me. This is like absurd in our country. So, did you have any experience like that that you'd like to share?
Uh, so yeah, uh, in the South, in Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
one of the cultural shocks for me personally in my initial college years was, gun ownership. Um, Definitely had interacted with that in Kenya, but it's few and far in between. But it's not the same in the U.S. At the time, you could just for the citizens, could just walk in and purchase yourself a gun. So they're
Mm-hmm.
pretty widely available. The other thing was more of a culture shock to me was just how the credit system functioned. For a person my age in Kenya would not access as many things as we were able to access while we were in the States, because they had a credit system, and that could work against you. But if you use that positively, again, you could get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
What that meant is you're able to get access to cars,
Mm-hmm.
to money. You're able to travel on a credit card and then just pay it off. So you're able to get your experiences a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
uh, some good, some bad, obviously. You see, you're out there with no parents. Luckily for me, I had gotten a bit of experience in the real world, real life.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it really worked for me, especially during my time in the US, and just surviving out there. You gotta figure how to get through different things. It's very expensive. So you need to be not just book smart, but you also need to be a bit street smart to figure things out. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually concur with this street smart concept because
Yeah.
you mentioned the back to what you were saying. You mentioned the gun ownership. So
Yeah.
how old do you have to be eligible for you owning a gun, or are there rules? Do you have to sign something, or does what's the process like the gun ownership? Do you have any idea of it?
Uh, you know what? I never really got deep into the process of it.
Yes.
Uh, but I can tell you, just my experience was in my college.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the best experience, but there was
Mm-hmm.
a time that uh, we had a lockdown at the school because guns were drawn between students, and you know, eventually had a lockdown, and the local police did a search, and that was for me a culture shock because a lot of guns were recovered, and um, so I became aware that a lot of the students had actually were licensed gun owners, so
Oh.
and at that point I would say that maybe around 16 or 17 or 18, and I would want to believe it's at 18 years of age that you could actually get yourself a gun
Mm-hmm.
in the US. So yeah, that was that from my experience. Yeah, and I never really dug deep into it, but yeah, that was that part. It was a bit of a culture shock as well. How many guns were recovered
Mm-hmm.
um, at the school?
And it's interesting because I'd assume that from what from my experience in school or in campus here in Kenya, when you get into school, you're always searched. They look at your bag. They want to see if you have the correct student ID for you gaining access into the school gate. You see, so
Yeah.
it's kind of confusing because you're saying that the people went to school, the people who are in school, the students were searched and they found guns. So I believe that if I was also there, they definitely got a culture shock too. Because how are they walking into malls? Aren't they searched?
Particularly, say if you had, I would say that if they had the guns, there wasn't any like
Mm.
security searches per se
Oh.
in the school at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and not they wouldn't just be walking around with them, mostly concealed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yes, because of this turn of events where guns were drawn between two students at an event,
Mm-hmm.
then triggered the search, and the search came with a lot of guns being found. So I would think that they were concealed, and concealed to carry when they did. So it was not out for the public eye to just see, but more for
Yeah.
protection. And that's something that's ongoing in America, I believe. It's one of their rights, but obviously not in Kenya, unless you're very there's a process to that in Kenya for sure. It's not
Yeah.
the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like you to tell us more about your first impression of the US when you went there. Personally for me, because I haven't been there before, I think that when I go there, the first impression is nice weather. I don't know if there's good weather over there. Maybe you tell me.
Yeah.
Maybe interactions with people who kind of was there a language barrier for you? Or
Mm.
how was it? What was the first impression you had of the States when you first got there?
So for me personally, and it could be a different outlook. For me, the first thing is a sense of order.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, from home, the order in which they design their stuff, where how they build it, do their roads, their buildings, and just the symmetry of how they figure out their cities was
Mm-hmm.
something that really intrigued me, because obviously coming from home, you know we have the vibandas and all these things. It's not something you're going to see out there. So that order was one. Secondly, definitely interaction. We are we There's a lot more self-awareness
Mhm.
with in the American culture, um, where people are always trying to look good, uh, present themselves well,
Mhm.
um, and I would say that to a certain extent, it's a good and a bad thing. Because one thing that you'll always get is when people come back home or travel back to Kenya or
Mhm.
Africa in general, there's a huge sense of just relaxation, and it's just you can see, but there's a weight that's not on your shoulder where you
Mhm.
feel a lot freer, as compared to the US. The other thing with the interactions, it would just one thing about the US is the culture shock that I got is people are very connected to what they know.
Oh,
Um, so the first college, for instance, the first university that I went to was predominantly a black uh,
oh,
university. It
interesting.
was. So we had it supported the most of the Black Americans and then the international students, and we did have multi. It was a very multicultural university, but it was predominantly black.
Mhm.
With that, the other culture shock is when you go to the cafeteria when there were interactions. You would find the New Yorkers together. You'd find people from California in their own world, people from Florida in their own world, and that's just how they related. Versus, we obviously have that in Kenya, but ours
Mhm.
would probably be more tribal.
Mhm.
I think when you go to the bigger cities, like when you're in Nairobi, it's not really like everyone is there. It's just who you get to click with.
Mhm.
But it was pretty defined when I was in my initial years. That culture shock in the US, yeah, because and then the Africans would all come together, from Kenya, from Rwanda, from Burundi. I remember from Uganda.
Mhm.
Um, it almost just seemed like we were one people. But then on this other end, it's New Yorkers, California, and
Mhm.
so that was a bit interesting. Yeah,
Okay, okay. I
yeah,
see, I see. And you mentioned that the school that you studied in was predominantly black. It had a lot of black students, right?
yeah.
Um, so did you, through your interactions with people from there, because I'm pretty sure there are also, when you're walking around school or away from school, maybe at home or along the street, you are interacting with some white people too. So
Yeah.
do you experience any racism in any way?
Um, I would tell you that coming from a culture that you don't see a lot of that, especially in Kenya,
Mm-hmm.
because we're more predominantly tribal. I wasn't fully aware of that, so I didn't really see that in my time,
Mm-hmm.
and also, it was in the news and you could catch it on different. But for me personally, it was very different because I wasn't aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was solely focused on what got me there and what my experience, and so I interacted well with all races, and it was very multicultural in my interaction. So uh, a wide range of different cultural backgrounds that I was able to interact with, but I didn't really face that. Now, later on in life, I did get my hands on a nice looking vehicle.
Mhm.
And once in a while, the police would, track me behind and run my plates to see if there are any, your tags are connected to your name, your address, and any criminal background if you had any, or any things that you did against the law.
Mhm.
So once in a while, I would get that, but obviously um, they didn't see me. It was more of the car. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. Yeah,
I get you because I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube about Karens. Have you ever experienced the Karen situation before? Like you
yeah.
see this, have you had such an experience?
No, not for me particularly. Not really. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah, because this video I saw, it was I think it was a clip from a movie. It was a
yeah,
black it was a black woman who was in a park with a kid on a stroller, and she was talking to another kid. I think her other kid, little bit older, on the phone. I think they were video calling, and since they were in a park, there are benches on the park, and there was a,
mm,
a white lady seated next to her.
yeah,
And no, when this woman was talking to the other kid on the video call, I don't know if it was FaceTime or video call,
yeah.
but this other white lady started talking to the baby on the stroller, telling her,
Yeah.
does someone feel like the mom isn't giving them enough attention? And then, because the baby that's on the stroller is white, and the woman
Oh,
that's the stroller is black. So this
uh,
other white woman started saying that this woman has stolen the baby. And immediately
uh,
she called the cops on her and started saying, "Oh, I think I saw this woman with some drugs. She's talking to a woman, she's with drugs, and she has a white baby. I don't think that's her baby." So it was
yeah,
just weird. It felt like a current situation because you're like, oh, why are you batting in? You don't even know if the baby is mine or not.
yeah,
So that's why I thought maybe you had such an experience before because I've seen a couple of current videos trending online.
yeah. Definitely. I definitely didn't have a baby on a stroller, but jokes aside, yes, it's quite unfortunate, but
Mm.
that sometimes is stuff that happens there. It didn't happen to me,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's just in every culture you
Yeah.
will have lines that are crossed,
Mhm.
or extremes. And so once in a while, you get to see that on that other end. In Kenya, I think ours is also a bit more like the tribal way, where
Mhm.
people want to back their tribal leaders. But yeah, but so it's it gets there. And different cultures, different countries, and different continents have an issue to deal with and to face over time. So yeah,
Mhm. And
yeah,
you also mentioned that you felt the first time you went to the States, you felt like there was a sense of order and you actually liked how the buildings were or how they were erected or constructed. So,
yeah,
are there a lot of skyscrapers over there? Because I know in Kenya we have, but not that many. But
yeah.
uh, what's the infrastructure like over there?
Yeah. So, and we were just having this conversation yesterday, just bits and pieces of it. So, Kenya is a smaller country, obviously, as compared to the US. So, yeah, definitely they do have way more skyscrapers than
Mhm.
Kenya. They're also predominantly a capitalist country where they try to get businesses running in the country to support the economy. Um, I don't think we do that much in Kenya.
Mhm.
Obviously, all our industries are, either being killed or in the verge of on their last breaths, and hopefully that is something that can change. Uh, but that sense of order in just the individuals as well.
Mhm.
You find people are more, like I said earlier, self-aware,
Mhm.
thinking about their mental health, physical appearance and look, and that translates to how you also live, and how um, you take that into account, because living is an art.
Mhm.
So for them on that end, is it, it seemed like they really think through uh, decades down the line when
Mm-hmm.
they get a project done. And I know we've in Kenya we've done that with especially with our road system, which is good. But we definitely need to assimilate those things that are great in those countries and bring them back home, in a sense of uh, thinking through things before just doing stuff, and sustainability of it, and making sure that the country is resourceful enough to grow and not just to maintain the status quo. But yeah, so that order was something that really, uh, it captured me, and it
Mm-hmm.
was something that I felt sad about Africa in general, Kenya at home. But we're not too badly off, So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And was there any how am I going to put it? Like you see, like in France, in Paris, is it Paris or Paris? The
It-
what's it called? The Eiffel Tower.
the
When
power,
everybody
yeah.
goes to, they say, "Oh, have you visited the Eiffel Tower? Oh, it's an eye-catching place. You have to see it." Was there any building of some sort like that captured your eye, like that you definitely want someone to see or visit once they're there?
Okay, yeah. So for me, particularly from childhood, I was always intrigued about business. Business was always something that I thought was great because it changes your life. If you're able to get into a good, business, it changes your life. It changes everything around you. So, and that for me was obviously in the movies. The epitome of a business city for me was New York, and that is actually the first place that I visited when I got to the states. So I traveled to New York. I was able to take the ferry and see the Statue of Liberty, and just walk down Manhattan, and that's where the New York Stock Exchange is. So that's the first place that I visited, and I looked forward to checking out, and so I did, because there is a lot of decisions that
Mhm.
trickle down to the rest of the country from New York. So it's more of that order system thing that that's always internally for me, mentally and in my heart. It's just a bit of sense and order. So New
Mhm.
York was it, Manhattan to be specific.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I actually love that. So,
Yeah.
another question. So, what's your? I know you've been there for a while, so I know you definitely know how to interact with the language over there. So,
Mm.
I know you definitely know this. So, is there any slang word or phrase that you could maybe teach us and how to use it? I know that black people over there, when they want to say "I'm gonna beat you," they say "I'm finna beat you," or what do they say? "I'm finna."
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
So I,
yeah.
I, I didn't, and people make fun of me a lot, specifically my uh, partner, my wife, because I was raised in Mombasa and I don't have the accent from the coast. Um, and so I didn't pick up while I was in the US. I didn't pick up on that, but there were phrases that we always used that I felt were pretty nice to use, and that's you know all day, every day, and you already know, you know. So in a sense, a person would, if it's a friend that I, built a relationship, and they said, "Hey, Ron, how's your day?"
Mm-hmm.
You already know,
Mm-hmm.
with a smile on your face, it means that you're having a great day.
Mm-hmm.
But if it were otherwise, then you'd get into the details of it. So you already know was always something we used. And if we had a team in sports, The weekend was coming, vacation was coming in, and um, you're going to enjoy your weekend all day, every day. You
Mm-hmm.
already know. So
Yeah.
such terms, and I still use it once in a while. Obviously in a different continent now, but yeah. So you already know, and all day, every day. Yeah.
You know what
So
it is.
you know what it is. Yeah. You already, yeah. So yeah, there you go. There's a song about that. You know what it
Oh,
is. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how would you describe? Because I don't know if this is true. I'd rather get some insights from you. But I hear people saying that uh, the vegetables, the food,
Yeah.
like tomatoes, nyanya, nyanya, like
Yeah.
bitungu, all that, and the like sweet potatoes and stuff, like stuff you can buy from the grocery shop or
Yeah.
sokos, vibandas here in Kenya. Is it true
Yeah.
that when you go to the States, they're more expensive there than it is over here, or it's just a misconception that goes around?
Yeah. Yeah. So specifically, you're talking about organic food.
Yes, organic food.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Definitely. Obviously, the U.S. has a bigger population,
Mm-hmm.
and and this also intrigued me. Very few farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the seasons that they have all four seasons in different parts of the country. Uh, at the same time, they're still able to feed all the people, including all the immigrants, which we were part of,
Mm-hmm.
um, and sustain the country as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're going through snow, that's winter, summer, and the other seasons, which are a bit more friendlier for farming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you find that because of the huge population, and you've heard this GMO,
Mm-hmm.
which is food that's been, a little bit altered so that production can be higher and can meet can meet the needs of the country. So yeah, that that they do. So when you get smaller farmers who sell their organic uh, plants, crops, it does cost a bit higher. Uh, but as compared to what we have at home, it's golden, because what they would term as organic is what we have readily available for us in the kiosks, vibandas, and the sokoni, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it does fetch a higher. It's a premium product when you're out there. So and I think uh, hence a lot of cancer and all these diseases that have come with just trying to commercialize food. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's something that, and even the taste is a bit different. That's something we were having a conversation about today. It's a bit
Really?
different. Yeah, it's a bit different when things are done commercially, but versus when it's done for subsistence farming. So you don't get to use a lot of the products that they have to use. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to really control the environment. It's more natural.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that in the issues of health, we should count ourselves lucky. We obviously do have GMOs being introduced in Kenya, and it's a bit scary, obviously, to try and meet the standards of feeding the population, but at the same time, you know, those things do have adverse effects on the population as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And just to add on it, I don't know if you've heard about the finance bill that was passed in Kenya recently by our president.
yeah,
Yeah, because right now, people everywhere are complaining because of the high cost of living,
mm,
economy,
yeah,
everything. So, is
yeah.
that the same situation back in the States where you are? Because no, I had people saying, or rather seen it on Twitter and online, people saying that whatever happens in the West definitely affects the third world countries in one way or another. It's kind of a spillover effect. So is the economy as bad there as it is over here? Because right now we're paying so much taxes.
Yeah.
Is it the
So
same?
yeah, so I'll tell you this. I'm an just to start off, I'm an Advent um, preacher of self-sustainability
Mm-hmm.
and off-grid living, and
Oh.
just try and do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in time, I am not in the US. Definitely
Oh.
in a different country currently, but not in the US. But yes, because the countries have adopted the same financial system where
Mm-hmm.
it's a Federal Reserve, and it's the same system that's in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a clip the other day where Patrick Lumumba was asking, how is it that in a continent with so many currencies, we
Mm-hmm.
still have to use a dollar for the exchange?
Mm-hmm.
So that means it definitely still affects us. But to to get to the point, the effects that are happening in the Western world are a little bit different from what we're seeing in Kenya. Yes, that will affect, but when you top that with corruption or mismanagement of funds, where yes, we're paying taxes in the West, but you actually do see that order that I was actually talking about, where the streets are well done.
Mm-hmm.
The county, local governments are working, and not to say they don't have corruption as well. That is there, but the percentages are very different. I would say, just theoretically, I would say that if the corruption as compared to what
Mm-hmm.
we have in Africa is out of 100, 30% would disappear on this end, and 70% would go back into the economy.
Mm-hmm.
In Africa, you're seeing 70% disappear,
Yes.
uh, 20% unaccounted for, and 10% goes back into the economy. So
Yeah.
it's it's um it's sad actually, because it comes
Mm-hmm.
back to bite us.
Mm.
And the people that are doing that have to think about their next generation and the generation after that, because money comes and goes, but if you build something that would last, then that would affect your, because we procreate, we grow, and we exit, and we leave out the next generation back. And so we need to start thinking long term. And if when we start thinking long term, we start making smarter decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we that in turn affects the economy way better. And yeah, just creates a better social structure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it does affect. Yeah.
Let me just touch on this. It's something I've actually remembered when you're talking about how corruption happens in Africa and in the States with the 70 and the 30. There's this funny. I don't know if it's going to be funny to you, but Larry Madowo. That
None.
he's Larry Madowo.
Yes,
He's
yeah,
like a journalist, yeah, and
yeah,
he used to work in Kenya, and it's like he started working. Is it BBC or I don't know, some
yeah, yes, I
national
saw that.
media house? So he was interviewing this Ugandan uh, government official,
Mhm.
and he was asking him, it was in the lines of, don't you feel like whatever is happening in your country isn't constitutional? Like it was in the lines of, I don't know, it was corruption or something to do with government officials, but it was something he was actually calling him out on something.
Yeah,
And in the States, when that is done, because we definitely see people like Trump going to the media houses and they get interviewed, and they're
mm,
literally grilled. It doesn't matter if you're an official, if you're a government official, if you're someone high up, you
yeah,
definitely have to give your answers, you have to get interviewed. So this
Yeah.
official from Uganda was interviewed by Larry Mado and was asked a question. And his answer was, oh my God, like that's not something you can even like unashangaa huyu mtu sasa ni nini anasema. So he
Mm,
asked him, you know, Larry, you're just from here, Kenya. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, in the States, you're just from here, Kenya. And you know, in our tradition, you do not talk to someone in the government like that. You have to come with some decorum. You do not talk to me just like that. So yeah, it's kind of I
yeah.
don't know if we're literally hurting ourselves, but I mean, it's the people we
Yeah.
choose.
Yeah. The world is at a loss because initially the governments were formed to serve the people,
Yes.
uh, but the governments have gained so much power
Mm-hmm.
over centuries,
Mm-hmm.
and now it seems that it's the people serving the government. So and it's across the world, and it's a sad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what we have now. So there definitely needs to be some change, some conscious change where the leaders actually want to leave a legacy. We keep hearing about corruption. These are just legacies that are happening now, and that change will cause a bit a bit more of a functional social environment, and so
Mm-hmm.
things don't are not as shaky. So yeah, so in the Western world, you'll find if there's an economic financial crunch,
Mm-hmm.
there's subsidies, different things that the the citizens of that nation would get to get through that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just not something that we really have in our storehouses in Africa, and it's a very deep conversation. It's not just really black and white, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also not that uh, far fetched. We could still come together and fix things, and the
Mm-hmm.
leaders, our politicians need to serve the people. They're not the other way. But yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely not the current um, scenario.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so you said you were living in Louisiana, right?
Yes. Initially.
So
Yeah.
okay. So what are some of the essential tips or advice that you give to someone planning their first trip to Louisiana? Like, what's the first thing you tell them to do so that they can be in the know when they go there?
First off, to put their seatbelts on if they're coming for a visit, because Louisiana is pretty historic,
Mm-hmm.
way laid back. It
Mm-hmm.
almost felt like home because I was born and raised in Mombasa, so it was very chilled,
Mm-hmm.
especially in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and it doesn't get snow.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in my time, it did snow in Louisiana, but it usually doesn't. It's a
Mm-hmm.
one-off situations, but yeah, just prepare for a good time. Now I moved to Missouri, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and Missouri is Midwest, and it has all the four seasons. Winter is snow heavily, so depending on when you book your trips,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you check the weather and either purchase or dress appropriately and accordingly
Mm-hmm.
to the time and the state that you're visiting. It's good to just do a research on that. It's not you just don't pick up and go. So
Yeah.
check the weather and check what you need, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and just do a little bit of research on what would be interesting for you to see. I was
Mm-hmm.
particularly not a person that visits historical places,
Mm-hmm.
so I was more of the motorcycles and jumping on a boat. and
Uh-huh.
having a good time. So that was more of the life that I enjoyed
Mhm.
versus the museums and stuff. But yes, I'm getting older. These are definitely things that I'm looking into.
Uh,
It's a more slower pace lifestyle, and as a parent as well, it's you gotta find interesting things to do that are not
mhm.
dangerous. So yeah.
Okay. And you've mentioned bikes time and time again, and I know it's something that you like doing. So, have you tried any extreme sports or adventurous activities in Louisiana with your bike, or if any, which one was your favorite?
Uh, so it was just more of recreational,
Mm-hmm.
not anything with racing involved.
Mm-hmm.
Although recently I've gotten into dirt bike riding, which is out in the bush,
Mm-hmm.
and we do have a little bit of that, and it's just to keep fit. But yeah, but so I do that now, not on the main road, but with the full gear and enjoying the view, and trying to make sure that the bike doesn't drop you, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like the motocross riding. Yeah, so I do a
Okay.
lot more of that once in a while, once or twice in a month.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fun. Didn't get to do much of that in Louisiana my first year, but I did was into recreational biking when I went to Missouri. And so we'll just get on the bike and explore smaller towns.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the roads are pretty good, wide,
Mm-hmm.
and if you get a friend or two to get some motorcycles, it's a great experience. You get to see a lot, and the
Mm-hmm.
experience is it's almost surreal when the wind is blowing on you. So yeah,
Oh, and
yeah.
did you encounter any roads with potholes, or the infrastructure over there is really nice?
No, 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 no. They sell us on Hollywood. There definitely are some places that are
Uh-huh.
pretty beat down, for sure. Uh, but in general, they do a good job in selling that, especially with the
Mm-hmm.
movies and what we see. Um, but at the same time, it's a bit more structured. They obviously don't have like Kibera,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
but there's some pretty rough places out there as well. Do not be lied to. There's some pretty rough places out there. So yeah, and
Okay.
places that you will not feel safe as well. But not as bad as, say, if you're comparing to that, but
Mm-hmm.
just as terrible. So yeah, you will meet a pothole here and there in different parts of the road system, but
Uh-huh.
it's not as rampant as when we go back to the village and our people are not doing what is needed to be done. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, moving on to a good part now, an interesting
Mhm.
part. Let me talk about food. So, food is
Yeah,
often a highlight of travel experiences, or basically anywhere you go, food will always be there. So, what
yeah.
are some of the must-try dishes or local delicacies that you discovered during your stay in Louisiana? What's the food like over there, or some
Whoa.
street
So
stuff?
yeah, so I would. This is very tricky for me because I'm vegetarian. So
Oh,
my food choices are limited,
uh-huh.
but nonetheless healthy. And I think the world is going towards more of vegetarian diets, and I'm happy about that. But
Oh,
that
okay.
said, talk about Louisiana. You have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of seafood restaurants as well, that as a non-vegetarian you'd want to explore.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, as a vegetarian, you'll always have an option that fits the bill. They have the veggie burgers, different kinds of vegetarian options, the Indian restaurants. It's very multicultural. But for Louisiana, you wanna maybe want to get the full experience and have their local food. And it's a lot of seafood as well that you'd enjoy out in Louisiana.
Okay. And
Yeah.
another question, just revolving around your interactions with people over there. Did
Yeah.
you ever encounter a really nice experience or a memorable experience that you had encountering with someone in Louisiana that made you feel like, these people aren't actually that bad, or these people are actually good? Did you have any such encounter?
Um, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think this applies to all parts. You'll obviously have, and at home as well, you'd obviously have different characters, some that
Mm-hmm.
click with you and some that don't.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, particularly, just my background was interesting for some,
Mm-hmm.
and that was in my workplace,
Mm-hmm.
uh, especially my workplaces, because one thing America you need to do is work. So that becomes your second home away from home,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to, you got bills to pay. So and you want to make sure that the place that you work at is receptive, and it's a good environment because you're going to spend quite a bit of time. So I did have some quite some amazing experiences. Looking back to this day, I miss that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where we had a lot of fun at my workplace. And I studied to be an accountant. So as an accountant, I had a lot of fun. And I know my biking and all that does not add up to what an accountant, the persona or the demeanor of an accountant, but it's a bit different. Yeah. But we did have amazing times with a lot of my work colleagues and friends that I made along the way. So overall, I had amazing interactions. And my workplace, there wasn't any staircase.
Mm-hmm.
From the president of the company to the higher ups to the different departments, it was very gelled, and that's something. That culture was something that a bit of order, but at the same time a very friendly environment. From my experience, it's not probably not going to be an experience for everyone, but that is something that I enjoyed, and it makes work a lot more fun when you have that as well. So yeah.
Okay. And during the last podcast we had, our former guest, he had visited Southeast Asia, and he
Okay.
mentioned that I don't. It was Cambodia, or yeah, I think it was Cambodia or Malaysia,
Yeah.
and they said that when he was interacting with people over there, they were really intrigued by the color of his skin.
Mm.
They were like touching. They want to touch to see, does this
It's
person, is it a
yeah.
tint, can it move, is it a tan? So are there any misconceptions associated with being a black person in the States, or basically in Louisiana where you are?
No, 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 no.
Oh.
Especially in the US, because you have people from all different backgrounds. It's
Mhm.
a very multicultural. US, I believe, is built by immigrants, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
The American Indians were first, and then everyone else came in. So
Mhm.
over time, yes, they've had their back and forth with slavery and everything, but
Mhm.
over the centuries, it's a very multicultural society. So I,
Mhm.
I definitely did not get much of that. Uh,
Mhm.
but yes, I did. Coming from Africa, there was a bit more interest to understand how things were.
Mhm.
Some were very, knowledgeable about Africa, and some were not.
Mhm.
So be kind enough to just let them know that yes, you show them some pictures
Mhm.
and see the other side of Africa, because at the time what they were used to see was save the children, uh,
Mhm.
drought areas, but
Food for mine.
yeah, they never really see the cities and beautiful coastal town and One thing that I've also gotten to appreciate over time is our beautiful villages.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of industries in our villages, the greenery, the fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
It goes a long way for just holistic value as an individual. Your mental, physical health. And so yeah, so it was good. It was good. I would find myself sometimes just sharing a bit more about Africa,
Mm-hmm.
but I never really felt that someone was trying to poke in my skin. Some were darker than me, that were
Mm-hmm.
Americans. Some were lighter than me, and I
Mm-hmm.
was just right there in the middle. So it was not very different. And I did have a bit of hair, so
Oh.
um, some of them would confuse me for an American. So yeah.
Oh, okay. And did you get asked these funny questions? I hear them asking people, but I see this in movies though.
Mm.
When they ask you, where do you sleep in Africa? Do you sleep in trees? What do you shower with? Do you guys have toothbrushes? Did you experience some of these weird questions?
Well, in the I think on my first semester, I made some friends from some of the classes that we had took together,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a time. Someone asked me about that, and they did catch on in the conversation that I was joking, and
Mm-hmm.
I went about, but they were not very educated on Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But they were aware about South Africa, which has been quite developed.
Mm-hmm.
Sad to see what's going on, but it has been quite developed. So they were kind of aware about that, but not the other parts of Africa. So I did get a bit of a laugh when I would share that at 12 years old I had to kill a lion
Mm-hmm.
to actually be accepted in the society. We slept
Mm-hmm.
under a tree, but they
Mm-hmm.
did catch on that that was a joke, and yeah, that was fun. That was fun. It was more of a joke, but yeah, nowadays people are more aware of
Mm-hmm.
what Africa is. We obviously need to continue growing, and
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, people are aware, and a lot of people look forward to going to coming to Kenya and to Africa as a whole for vacations,
Mm-hmm.
and it's beautiful. Just the fact that it feels it's not a full concrete jungle. We still have a bit of wildlife left, and that
Mm-hmm.
natural appeal, which is
Mm-hmm.
very healthy as well. Yeah. So
And are there any, like, you see how it is in Kenya? We have a couple of maybe festivals or just nice cultural experiences.
oh
Did
yeah,
you did you ever attend any cultural festival in
I
Louisiana, or
sure
do
did.
they have that there?
Yeah.
Yeah, how is
I
it?
was young at the time. I definitely, yeah, I will just put this out there. I definitely went to see G Unit at the time, which was a very 50 Cent and them.
Uh-huh.
But culturally, Louisiana is also known for jazz. So there were a
Oh.
lot of jazz restaurants, and I enjoyed that. Just the instruments coming together and that slow um, music, and just beautiful mix of instruments together. So I ended up going into a few jazz concerts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so culture, that's something that I definitely enjoyed um, while I was there. And, I picked on that into a more peaceful kind of music that I listen to. So jazz stuck with me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, particularly the instrumental side of it, because a lot of things nowadays are just thrown all over the place, and music is not what it used to be back in the day. And
True.
yeah, so jazz definitely from Louisiana. You go out to New Orleans, they're just playing jazz from start to finish, and it's beautiful. So yeah, so that's something that I enjoyed culturally.
Yeah, actually, about the jazz, now that you've mentioned it, you see here. Okay, I think it's a kind of an ideology that we have here in Kenya that
Yeah.
you go to a restaurant and you hear them playing jazz music. Oh my God, if you know your pocket is not deep, just walk out because the
Oh,
menu is going to come and you're going to look at names you don't even know. And then something is brought over there. And when the bill comes, it's like, I don't know how many dollars for you to pay just because of the music and the ambience. But I think it's just something that it's a misconception in Kenya and the
yes.
lifestyle.
It is
Yeah.
a misconception. Yeah, but I would say that we're getting there. I know Kenya is doing a lot of that as well nowadays. Sundays, you have jazz in different restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
people playing live music, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Creates that calm sense. But in the US, it's also more of just talent, a wide variety of talents that are showcasing. And obviously, with the music there, there's a lot of people do. It pays the bills, so they do partner with the restaurants, and we obviously have a good band that's coming in, or good jazz set that's coming in, and you look forward to going to that restaurant to listen to them. So, and it's happening quite a bit now in Kenya. So just the ambience, and also in New York,
Mm-hmm.
the underground, in the trains, even on in just in the streets, there's a lot of talent that you'll just see out there, and
Mm-hmm.
someone will just have their guitar and a jar where you can just
Oh
say
yeah.
thank you. Yeah. So, but it's real talent, and
Mm.
find some of those guys playing on the streets, and then the next thing they're on the big stage and
Yeah.
they're millionaires. So it's good. It's good. We're getting there one day at a time. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so here's another question. So we hear many black people complaining about being racially profiled at airports and they ask thousands of questions. So what was your experience like at the airport going to Louisiana?
So not much of that in internally traveling internally in the country, but sometimes. Uh, but yes, you know you they would do random checks, and at one point in my exit,
Mm-hmm.
coming back to Kenya from Dallas, I
Mm-hmm.
had one of those where know, I found that I was picked for this one, but I wouldn't particularly say it's not an experience that I had. But yes, there are some interesting situations that occur.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the country has a lot more to deal with, coming in and out of the country,
Mm-hmm.
contraband, um, you know, different kinds of things. America is not a friend to all the countries in the world, so it's a lot of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens to some people, and it happened to me, but I took it as a random check where I have to open everything up, turn everything upside down, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the greatest feeling, but that's someone's job, So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
True.
someone's doing their job,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it's just interesting. They do that at the railways now, like when you're taking the
Oh.
train
Mm-hmm.
in Kenya, right? They have the dog sniffing for drugs, and you gotta wait in
Uh-huh.
line unless they stopped. But yeah, but the security checks have gotten quite tightened. It's not
No. Okay.
obviously world events that have caused all this. So yeah,
And I also see in movies, when you see definitely movies because I've only traveled with movies to the States. So
yeah,
I see that the response time for the police when you call the emergency number, the 991, the 911. Yeah, for us
yeah.
it's 999. So the 911, what's like
Yeah.
the record response time for them? It's really fast. Is it
Well, I
fast?
is it?
Is it fast like we see in movies?
Yes, yes, because especially in the bigger towns, they do have. resource, and
Mm-hmm.
it's functional. It's functional resourcing. So yes, you do have quicker response times
Mm-hmm.
when certain things happen. Again, it depends on the situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you find that the police do generally will get to an emergency in good time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
let's say as compared to if you're comparing that to home. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think so, yeah, that they would. It's a bit better, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, how has your stay in the Louisiana, the States, how has it influenced your perspective on the world and basically your lifestyle too? And how has it impacted your personal growth?
So that's a very good question. Like I said, I went there for school,
Mhm,
and early on, I realized that it was not about the certificate, but the journey to getting that certificate. There's a lot of maturity that you have to build up along the way,
mhm,
and a lot of things you have to do, networking, being yourself, but making sure that you assimilate into the society. So that means flexibility as
mhm,
well. And then you also get different value systems. You meet people from so many different cultural backgrounds,
mhm,
but to be strong enough in your own values that you don't lose yourself.
mhm,
Uh, the best thing that America did for me was it made me ask myself about my roots. And in a sense, I met people that knew their generations, uh, their 3, 4 generations down, you know. Um, and it begged me to ask the questions. I don't know much of the generations before me.
mhm,
Um, and it got me looking deeper internally in regards to what are my roots, and appreciating my existence today,
mhm,
from my father to grandfather to where that started. Where did my tribe come from? How did they get to this place that we call home? And understanding that, because if you don't know where you come from,
mhm,
it'll be very hard. And this is more internal. It'll be very hard to know where you're going. It'll be
mhm,
very hard to be strong on your values and what your system is and what you're going to give to the next generation.
mhm,
So that was very apparent that I found, that I learned, and this was from interactions in my different jobs as well. Just understanding that,
mhm,
culturally, you're seeing businesses that have been standing for over centuries. And that and fighting through. One story about Chicago.
mhm,
When Chicago was very at its infancy, they were building the city. Chicago is very, very beautiful. The whole town burnt down, and
oh,
yeah, so it was a huge accident, and the whole town just burnt down. They lost a lot, but a group of people in that town said, "Hey, look, we love our town. We're
mhm,
going to rebuild it." And they didn't give up on the town just because they lost their livelihoods, and they figured it out, and they built the town back up.
mhm,
Chicago town is a very beautiful city, very beautiful. And to know that story, and to know, you just got to put your feet down, and wherever you are, you can make it work, you can make it beautiful.
uh-huh,
And so that begged me to look at home in a different light.
mhm,
um, uh, that you should not wait for someone to come to do it for you. Why don't you start where you are?
true.
You know, and what that got me to do was go back to my village, That village home that was just looking like, I tried to make it even better, more functional, more beautiful. And it puts a sense of responsibility uh, from where you come from. You need to take care of that and not just focus on where you're going.
Mhm.
And so that the next generation carries from where you left off. So that's
Yeah.
what I saw. That's something that I picked up from the US.
Mhm.
Uh, Structured, deep roots are very important. Secondly, is that perception and order. What you think is what you are.
Mhm.
So we leave Africa to go to these Western worlds to think, to chase a good life.
The
Um,
American dream.
yeah, the dream. But we should have a Kenyan dream. The American dream is not what people think it is. You have to
Mhm.
work your behind off just to get by, you know, and probably way more than we have to do when we're back at home.
Mhm.
So realize that if you can use half or just three-quarters of that energy and
Mhm.
put it back home, it's obviously not as resourceful with the credit system and
Mhm.
the opportunities and jobs. But any small thing that you can put together, any idea that you can follow through, growing your own food, um, because that's another thing that I picked up on. Health is wealth, and this organic meals, food that we have in our country
Mhm.
is a more healthier. You have a bigger variety of health benefits that come from that versus out
Mhm.
this other end. So you definitely get to the credit system. You're making the money. You're living the life, but you find that your health could be at risk as well. It's a concrete jungle. But
Mhm.
then if you look at home, you have what's expensive on this end is readily available for us.
Mhm.
Um, and once you live in the city for a while and you work in that system,
Mhm.
you will start appreciating the peace and more laid back lifestyle that we have and the non development.
Mhm.
Um, and you start appreciating that more.
Mhm.
So those are things that were instilled in me from my experience in the US. It's more of a value system of health and progression and your roots. Just
Mhm.
very important to not just be a flag because there's a lot of things that will come, a new thing that will come today, another new thing that will come tomorrow. If you keep picking up on all these things, you eventually forget who you are. So that's something that was still very strong and important to me today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So, as a wind up, in the interest of time, here's one last thing I want to ask. Last week here in Kenya, we celebrated I don't know if you know this Muslim holiday called
Mm,
Eid al-Adha. It's Eid al-Adha, something like that.
mm,
The festival of
okay.
sacrifice. So, because you said in the US, there are very many people from different backgrounds, definitely different religions. And here
Yeah.
in Kenya, we also celebrate the Muslim holidays. So,
Yeah.
seeing as we also in the US, people also celebrate Christmas. Do they also celebrate these Muslim holidays, or they don't?
Yeah. So America initially was formed with that Christian background.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of things are changing. I am a Christian myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I also grew up with my Muslim brothers and Indian brothers as well, and their culture is a bit different from ours. But yes, as while in my stay in the US, yes, those were definitely not holidays that were acknowledged in regards to don't show up to work because it's Eid and so forth and so forth. But yeah, they would for the few Muslims that I know, they would either take some time off to enjoy the holidays. But yeah, but it's not it was definitely not like what we have in Kenya, where the holiday happens and the country acknowledges that per se. So yeah, I don't know
Okay.
about now. It's been a while, so yeah, but
Oh,
I don't think it's yeah, I don't think it's, uh, it's changed.
yeah, okay. And
Yeah,
here's my last question.
yeah.
If I was to travel to Louisiana, let's say tomorrow or next week or next month, what
Hmm.
travel destination would you highly recommend for me to visit once I'm there?
What travel destination?
Yeah.
I would say that you should go to New Orleans. And when you're in New Orleans, go around Bourbon Street.
Mm-hmm.
So you get all the food, you get all the jazz, and
Mm-hmm.
you get all the mellow people. So
Oh.
that was a great experience.
Uh-huh.
We went more than once, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
that was beautiful. And you will see crazy things as well, but on a general fact, it's mellow. You get the jazz and the
Mm-hmm.
food. So yeah, that's what.
Okay.
So New Orleans, Bourbon Street. Yep.
Hmm. Okay, awesome. I'll be sure to make a mental note of that once I get my money ready and
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for
No
your
worries.
time. We
Yes,
received so much insight from you, and I feel like I've traveled already over there. And
I'm glad to
once
hear it.
again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, hopefully that's a bit insightful. I know we got a bit political there, you know. With
Yeah.
age, you look at things a bit different, and
Yeah.
it does slip in. But thank you for accommodating that, and yeah, thank you for having me. It was very interactive. I appreciate that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Have a
All right.
nice day. Or is it
Have
evening or day?
so I'm currently in Australia, and it's 10 p.m. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Hey, it's
America, Louisiana would be a bit behind currently. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
bye.
All
Have a
right.
nice
See ya.
evening.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.